My chest felt the pain of all the running as we zipped through the trenches in that bloody, cold, freezing, mud-covered, shit-smelling day. It felt like it has been compressed by a mountain placed on top of me, crushing my ribs and my lungs. But you ignore it. You try to not pay attention when you are running for your life. It all started about an hour ago, when the enemy began shelling our location. It was a relentless barrage, hitting the bunker every few seconds. We had grown used to cyber warfare, to be vigilant of the drones faintly buzzing in the sky before dropping a grenade, RPG head, or a bomb. We have been doing it for months, but they caught up recently, using our same tactics. That's why it was shocking to feel the entire ground underneath us shake as the first few shells dropped on us, collapsing the roof of our station over us, killing instantly half of my group and leaving the rest partially buried. I don't know how Popovich, Gonzalez, Ode, Cohen, Snow, Peng, or Mackenzie made it out. I must have been knocked out with the explosion, thrown out of the bunker, but what I do know is waking up to Mackenzie kicking the heavy door out of its frame to bust it open as the men regrouped. My senses were dulled, except for the sharp pain on the left side of my body, or the faint hammering sound of the ammo hitting the ground. I looked around, hoping there would be more of the group. But this was it. Us, and a tall, thin man at the end of the ditch. The man was covered in black soot from wherever he crawled out of. His clothes had been shredded or torn by the blast. I don't know who he was, but he must have been from the group hiding in the barn about 500 meters where we were stationed. The barn that now was a crater. I can see others scouting around, trying to find our Sarge, but he was nowhere to be found. Clearly trapped under the rubble we called once our station. From where I was standing, I could see there was nothing but dirt, wood, and concrete jumbled in a mess. If the Sarge was there, he got crushed out of existence. He was like a father to us all. He made us more than just a fighting force. He made us a family. Looking at the group, I could tell they were processing the loss of our Sarge. I remembered 8 months ago, Ode and Cohen joined our station, but within minutes they were fighting because of their ancestral hatred. The Sarge grabbed them, locked them in a room, and told them, "Kill the other, and I will fuck you in the ass to the point you will run to the enemy asking for sweet death. Settle your shit in 1 hour, and that will be the goddamned last time I hear about your Israel-Palestinian bullshit." They never fought again. That's how you knew Sergeant John Keel dealt with problems. It was damned effective. We all came from different backgrounds, but he made us resolve our differences and work together, like brothers and sisters. We only had admiration for the man. My hands subconsciously tapped the ground, searching for my rifle, but I was just there, sitting against a broken beam of wood with a killer headache. I patted my body, feeling a single bulge to the side of my hip, followed by the sheath of the knife. How the hell was I supposed to fight now with a grenade and a knife? Popovich yelled something. I didn't quite recognize what it was because my ears only picked up a muffled sound, but he was reeling us up. My eardrums must have burst with the explosion, but who has time to call for a medic if there was one around? I stood up, following everybody, running away from the pommeling closing on us. Gonzalez took the mirror out of his shirt pocket, rising it above the ground line, checking for the presence of the enemy around. He could see dust rising at the distance. I poked my head out of the trench, seeing the barely distinguishable figures walking in our direction. Gonzalez tapped on Cohen's shoulder. Must be 2 or 3 platoons. The artillery surely is behind them, but the dust has to be tanks. I would say we are looking at 6 or 7. My eyes aren't that good to count individual heads, but that must be like 200 men, I replied. Let's set them up. Ambush them, Popovich replied, checking Cohen's and Ode's pack. We have enough C4 here to take some of them out. Peng checked what he pulled out before leaving. I have a bag with grenades. I looked at the bunch in disbelief. 9 against 200? Are you mad? We'll get shot before we reach them. They ignored me with their cruel silence. Mackenzie dropped back down, storing back a broken pair of binoculars. They are moving, coming here. Is it just artillery and footmen? Asked Popovich, scribbling on a piece of paper. Mackenzie and I replied in unison. They have tanks. Fuck, said Snow. I ain't coward, but we doing this? Taking done tanks. Gonzalez rubbed his rifle, getting off some of the grime off. He smirked under his dirt-covered face. ¿Qué pasó? Are you crapping your pants? Snow stood up, fired up with anger, fingers closed in. One of his fists would be the size of Gonzalez's head. Now that you are fired up, let's get those pendejos. Make them pay, he added, winking to Snow. The guys shared the load as best as they could. Popovich ran first through the maze of ditches and trenches. The rest followed. I was left behind with the new guy. He didn't say anything, just ran behind me. For a moment, I thought he had chickened out as I couldn't listen to the mud splashing of his steps, but he was there. He must have been special forces to be this silent. A new round of shelling started, missing us by the skin of our teeth. Every corner we stopped to breathe in for 10 seconds was followed by Peng telling us to move as the whistle of the shelling approached the ground. We soon realized the presence of a drone flying circles above us. It gave them intelligence of our position to readjust their aim. "Can you shoot it?" signaled Peng, shaking Mackenzie as we stopped. Mackenzie looked up, mentally measuring the path of the drone before we continue escaping the oncoming rain of shells. "Split ahead," yelled Popovich. "Mackenzie, Snow, Peng, turn left at the junction. Blind them." "Yes, sir," screamed the bunch. We ran another 50 meters before I saw them disappear into another ditch. As we dropped on our backs, struggling to swallow saliva to cover our dust-covered dried throats, I saw the new guy turn left, following Peng. Didn't the guy hear Popovich? Shells dropped near our location, and like a reflex, we stood up to run down the trench, but instead of following Cohen and the group, I ran back to the junction to catch up with the imbecile following Peng, Snow, and Mackenzie. I heard gunshots. Several of them, but all of them sounded like Mackenzie's rifle. I looked up, briefly following with my eyes the trail of smoke left behind by the drone flying in straight line. Clearly, it wasn't enough to take it down, but its operator lost control of the device. Then there was an explosion from the direction Mackenzie should be. I ran down the narrow passageway, zigzagging on it, hating the fact these things are designed to slow people down, both friends and foes. On the last turn, I almost ran on Snow and his massive pectoral muscles, followed by Mackenzie. Leaving Peng standing on a broken piece of wood, checking where the enemy might be before sprinting behind the others. The new guy stood behind him. "Wait up!" Peng's eyes widened as his head popped out of the ditch to give him a view of the oncoming enemies. "They have snipe." Peng didn't finish the sentence. I saw it in slow motion, Peng's fingers holding him up on the edge of the trench whilst his nose touched the dirt of the wall. Behind him, the new guy had drawn out a silver sword, placing the edge against Peng's back, plunging the sword until the hilt touched the flesh. Peng's helmet flew a few centimeters back as he arched back. Then the sword got pulled out, and Peng's lifeless body fell on the ground in front of the new guy. I didn't have time to feel shocked by the scene before the new guy rushed past me, following Mackenzie's trace. I howled in anger, pulling my knife out of its case. Running behind this traitor. "Motherfucker, you will pay for this." I swoop on him with my knife, ready to cut the guts out of this bastard, but I missed on my first attempt, receiving the hilt of his sword on the base on my skull, eating shit as I landed face first on the mud. I stood up quickly, feeling my head about to explode, but the guy was so fast, running through the maze with expertise until I lost sight of him when he turned into the trench Popovich, and the others must be in. I turned at the crossing. My feet slipped, making me fall once more, almost falling on my knife, but when I looked up, I saw a black horse standing outside of the trench, staring down at me. The calmed animal was magnificent. Its coat shone almost silver against the gray of the sky. It must have been a Samson or Shine horse because it was massive. Its eyes were deep brown, almost maroon. It had startled me, enough to make me forget what happened for a second, but my brain reminded me I had no time to stare at idiotic horses with a death wish in the middle of a bombardment. I stumbled into a run, grabbing the hilt of my knife as tight as I could, running through the maze of dirt, wood, iron, and concrete, leaving behind under passages, ramps, and craters left by the artillery, following the tracks of my friends. At the distance, I hear gunshots. Some were the familiar sounds of Cohen's XM7 blasting the entire magazine out, or Popovich's and O'Day's M16 relics, or Gonzalez's loved semi, but there were sounds of rifles we didn't have. They were engaging the enemy. I ran following the echoes of the sounds I knew, but one by one were slowly silenced. I took what felt like the last turn, coming face to face with the new guy, the traitor, whilst he removed his blade off Mackenzie's chest. Behind the bastard, the enemy dropped into the trench, checking the bodies of my brothers. I wasn't going to make a difference with my little knife and my grenade, but I would make my last moment count. I pulled the pin out of the grenade with my teeth, squeezing the lever, planning on embracing the traitor whilst we blow up together. Such a violent thought, he said, locking yourself in assured destruction to terminate your adversary. Huh? I got caught off my guard. I didn't think I told him what to do. What did you just say? His sword appeared to be exceptionally sharp and incredibly lustrous for a weapon in a battlefield. I felt like he smiled at me, but for some reason I couldn't look at his face. For the first time, I wondered how this person carried a sword around here. You are an interesting person. He swung the sword, putting it back in its sheath. Trying to kill me takes some balls? I interrupted. Courage. The words froze me in place. I wasn't expecting anything other than a mocking tone. He climbed out of the trench, standing right next to the black horse, staring at me, almost as if he could see deeper than anyone else. I squeezed the grenade harder in frustration, anger, and hatred. Where the fuck are you going? We haven't finished this. He swung one leg over the horse, one hand grabbing the thick mane of the animal. Then he looked down once more. Come on, Private Giuseppe Amato, we should not continue the altercation. We have items to attend to. He stretched his arm, inviting me to mount with him. I looked down, at my feet, at the soil mixed with the blood of my friends. My eyes traced the stream of blood back to the faces of Mackenzie, Popovich, Snow, Odeh, and Cohen. Then I perceived the movement of the soldiers inspecting their clothes, picking up the bags with our supplies and explosives. My mouth dried up and a knot at the top of my chest made me feel like I was drowning. My eyes returned to the man mounted on the black horse, inspecting every inch, every fiber of the entity seated there. Death stared back and smiled. Have you realized you are not alive?